Hello everyone and welcome to Solasta II Early Access, the start of Early Access. So do note, of course, that this game is incomplete, it has some bugs, and things are subject to change. Some of the systems and mechanics that we'll get in 1.0 are not present at the launch of Early Access right now, such as crafting. You can pick up crafting components, but you can't actually craft in the current version of Early Access. Also multiplayer, for example. This game is going to be 4-player co-op, but at the start of Early Access, it doesn't have the multiplayer feature. They're planning on adding that at some point during Early Access. It'll definitely be in the game by 1.0. So make sure to note that I'm talking about Early Access here in the start of Early Access. Early Access goes live on March 12th for PC. 1.0 should be also for consoles, and they just announced actually the price for Early Access is going to be $39.99 USD. So what is Solasta II? Solasta II is a CRPG inspired by tabletop RPGs, in particular Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Now it is a sequel to Solasta Crown of the Magister, which came out a few years ago, but it's not a direct sequel, so you don't have to have played that game to be able to latch on to what's going on in this game, although there were a few references and a few things said in the lore that I remembered from the first game, which was a nice added touch. You will be creating a custom party of 4 in this game, so just like the first game and similar to Baldur's Gate 3 in a way, except Baldur's Gate 3 is not a custom party of 4. And the campaign is set on the continent of 𝑁𝑜𝑡𝑒, which is different from the first Solasta. Now, the game, like I said, is inspired by D&D 5th edition. A lot of the core systems, rules, and mechanics are going to be very 5th edition, but the world itself is not Forgotten Realms like Baldur's Gate 3. Tactical Adventures created their own world, their own lore. All that stuff is very, very different. And even some of the rules and mechanics are different too. But I also want to mention that they based this game off of the 2024 rules set for D&D 5th edition, which is also different from the 2016 rules set. So if you played Baldur's Gate 3, which was largely based on the 2016 rules set, or if you played the first Solasta, this game is going to feel very familiar at its core. But there's enough little differences that will keep you kind of like engaged with understanding what's going on, and I thought that was a nice added touch. Now I can't say that the 2024 updated rules are better than the old rule system. I can't say that just yet, but I will say that it was exciting to have it play out a little bit differently. For example, in this game you don't get your subclasses until level 3. We now have weapon masteries. There's a change in how ambushing works. Some of the basic class features are different. The fighter now gets something called tactical mind, etc. Now, the overall point of this game is to play through the campaign, so there's a big overarching story going on, but you're going to be able to do faction quests along the way. And there's certain companions that can join your party of 4, temporarily join you, so it's not just a straight up story game. You do have other things that you can do, places you can explore off the beaten path. But quickly front loading just my general opinion here, I'm very excited for what this game is going to become. I really enjoyed my time in Early Access. It took me just over 10 hours to play through it. With that said, I think I could have easily gotten 15. There's a few things I didn't do, and there's the world map that I didn't fully explore. When the game launches into 1.0, I think we're looking at like 40, 50, 60 hours or so. But I really had a good time. It does have some bugs, and things need to be touched up and cleaned up, which is expected with Early Access. But from a foundational standpoint, and a visionary standpoint, I really like what they're doing with this game. I think it's going to be a really fun experience in 1.0. I think it's going to be more fun than the first game, and a lot of us on my channel really enjoyed the first game despite it being so, low budget. But from a foundational standpoint, I really love what I'm seeing here. Let's talk about the character creator quickly. So huge improvements from the first game, especially when it comes to offering appearance options, and also the whole character creation process right here can be as easy as you want it to be or as detailed as you want it to be. If you want to create a character super quickly but have a few choices that you make on your own, you go into quick creation, you choose class, ancestry, which is your race, and your background, and then all the choices within those categories are made for you in a way that at least makes somewhat sense. It should be playable. Or of course you can go into advanced creation and create everything on your own here and get into all the little individual choices that you'll end up making. You can also do quick creation and then go into advanced creation if you want to. So do quick creation first and just kind of get an idea what you're looking for, and then click on advanced creation and go in and edit things if you want to do it that way. This way, at least it sets it up right for you. and then you can change. Overall, they did a really good job for the start of early access. You can even click fill party and just have 4 characters made for you, and they should be playable in terms of their attributes and how the character is set up. Now, if you want to edit the appearance of a character, you can do this at any time by going into the creation menu and then clicking on the character themselves. And as you can see, way more options than offered in the first game. So I'm happy that they did this. And obviously the visuals, like the quality of the visuals, are much better as well. And when you get to the identity tab here, do note that you do choose personality. And this is one of the most important choices, as the personality that you choose will determine what dialogue responses are available when you're in dialogue. So in Baldur's Gate 3, you have one character get offered 4 or 5 different dialogue choices for that character. In this game, each of your 4 customizable characters will all have an option representing each one of them with their own personality. My main criticism of the character creator is that I found it hard to create a really masculine looking character. And this starts off with the body shape choice. So we have 2 choices here. You have the first one, which is more masculine, and then the second one, which is more feminine. But if we go back to the more masculine one, something just isn't right here. So what I did was I took a screenshot of that body shape, a different head, and I brought up Geralt of Rivia here, obviously a very masculine looking character, so I could see what was wrong, because I couldn't quite tell 100%. Well, if you take a look at Geralt's pectoral region, you can see that kind of goes like this and then up towards the armpit, while in Solasta II, the first body shape kind of gives you this little, it appears as if it's a boob versus a pec muscle. So that was the first thing that I noticed. And also it seems like for the body shape 1 right here, when you get to this part of the chest right here, it just straight up turns into a boob. While with Geralt, who does have a large chest, it's more of like a steady decline versus like a straight up boob. I also found the head preset system hard to create a masculine character. Now, it's not impossible, because there's a few randomly generated characters that I arrived on that did look a little bit more masculine in nature that I probably would have been okay with, but it's hard. It's not easy all the time. It depends on, like, I guess the luck of the draw. I don't know. So you have to choose different head shapes here, and then you combine them all, but the actual head presets don't really start you off in a good area. And I feel like they should have like 12 choices here, with the first choice, or maybe the 12th choice, whatever. Let's just say the first choice being like a super masculine looking face, you know, looking like Henry Cavill or Geralt of Rivia. And then as you progress, you know, the 6th choice is like right in the middle of masculinity and femininity. And then when you get to 12, you have like a super feminine looking face. And let us players start with one of those and then come in and add faces on top of that if we want to kind of morph a little bit towards something else. And actually, here's kind of a more masculine looking character, not completely, but this is a little bit closer on this random preset. But I also wanted to bring up that I feel like with a lot of the head preset options right here, you can't really get any thin lip options. And also there's not a lot of nose variety between the head presets, especially if you're trying to play as a dwarf. Like, I want my dwarf nose, and I wasn't able to even come close to getting what I wanted my nose to be for my dwarf. Pathetic. Overall, the character creator was really good. Just way too hard to create characters that I thought would look good, which typically when I'm playing, I usually have at least a couple really masculine looking characters in my group. And it's kind of possible in this game. It's just way too hard to get there, way too time consuming. And even when you do get there, I would say that the features aren't defined enough. So now let's talk about the basic feel of gameplay and controls. But this is a really big plus for me. I really like how things feel in this game. Obviously, it's not perfect, but for the start of early access, everything feels really good. And I really love that Tactical Adventures is doing what Larian allowed you to do in Baldur's Gate 3, and that is zooming that camera down into more of a third-person view. And on top of that, you can use WASD. And this works good with controller or with mouse and keyboard. It's so cool to be able to do this in a CRPG, and I think this should become a trend that all CRPG companies follow. Now, with that said, you can of course zoom back out, and you can keep using WSD, or if you're on controller, kind of play it a little bit more top down. And then with a simple click of a button, you can go right to point and click. And this can be useful. I find myself switching back and forth between WSD as well as point and click, but everything just feels really good, and it's really easy to switch, and it's also very easy to separate characters. So I have my main character right here. If I want him to go off on his own, I just click this little icon right here. It's one button press on the controller, and now as I control him, he goes ahead of everybody else. So it's really easy, and then I can switch over to my halfling, for example, and now I'm controlling the halfling, and they don't actually follow each other. The only thing I haven't figured out how to do is how to group up like 2 of them at a time. I don't think that's possible. I don't know if Tactical Adventures is going to add that or if they can add it, but that would be a nice extra added touch. But overall, just feels so good, and I love immersing myself down like this in a CRPG. It is so cool. There's just little things with the basic gameplay that just feel like such an upgrade. I have you guys out here on this one map right here. I'm not going to reveal what it is, but here's my little halfling character, and watch this. He has the light cantrip. To make it easy, all I gotta do is click this one button right here, and there you go. Now he's running around with a little light above his head. And all your other characters will also have lanterns if they don't have the light cantrip that you can turn on and off manually, or it will automatically go off when you enter into a dark space with whoever's leading the party. Light, of course, is an important mechanic in this game, so you know you don't want to be in the dark if it's causing disadvantage on your attacks and stuff like that. Some of you guys are wondering who this character is. Well, I don't want to spoil anything story-wise, but in this game there are temporary companions, and you do get to experience at least a couple of them in early access, which I'm really happy that they included this. But as you can see, yeah, I have 5 portraits here. 4 of these are my actual party members, while another one is a temporary companion. And basically you'll meet these characters and be able to go do quests with them, and sometimes they'll join you on a mission and then they'll eventually leave, and they can actually die, which is really cool, so you should value their lives. But I really like how they have this system. It's fun to increase that party size limit every once in a while, and you get to control these characters, their movement and in combat. And because they're only with you temporarily, it's like exciting when you have one. And I also like the characters too, so far, the 2 that I've been able to experience. When you're moving around these environments, sometimes passive skill checks will go off, such as a perception check if there is a trap nearby. And if your characters fail, you won't know where the trap actually is on the ground. But even if you succeed, if you're moving too fast, you can still run over some of these traps. So sometimes you're even incentivized or encouraged to enter into cautious mode and move a little bit slower and more finicky areas. So it's really engaging, that moment-to-moment gameplay of just simply moving around, which I thought they did a good job with. And speaking of passive perception or passive checks in general, even in some of like the dialogue cinematic type scenes where you're not actually choosing a dialogue option, some of these skill checks will still go off. Like your character might pass a history check, and then that character will give some more information on something which can be helpful, where if they failed, you wouldn't have gotten that particular scene. And then of course there are dialogue choices here. Depending on your character's personality choices back from the character creator will determine the types of responses that become available for you. So in dialogue, you're typically choosing one of 4 responses with your party, and each response is whatever personality you chose from the character creator. So it's not like just one character has like 5 different options here. It seems to mostly be that, you know, 3 or 4 of your characters will all possibly have something to say, and then you choose what personality you want to respond.
If you insist, but we've done nothing wrong.
You can discuss that with your Argad friends.
As far as choice consequence goes, I didn't really notice any major things that I could change when it pertains to the main story. I tried a few things, and it ultimately just puts you back into the same, you know, main story route. I think I even got a game over actually at one point for answering the wrong way, which got me killed, which was kind of funny, but ultimately I had to go with the one path. I couldn't change the actual direction of the main story. Tactical Adventures, I think, did say before that don't expect to play like a full evil playthrough or anything like that. However, some of your dialogue choices and your actions can affect factions in this game. If we take a look at the faction menu right here, you can see there's plenty of different factions, and you have different reputations with each faction. And when you have a better reputation, depending on how you respond to certain faction members and who you help in those factions, you can see right here, faction members will take your side in battle if you have sympathy, for example. But if we're indifferent, you can see right here, faction members remain neutral if they see you being attacked. So there are some effects of your dialogue choices on the game itself, and perhaps they add even more to this. Like you might even get like cheaper vendor prices from those faction members and stuff like that. So there are some consequences of your dialogue choices, and as you go up and down this reputation bar, there might be things like vendor prices or I have no idea what the extremes are, but it's kind of cool. Fun system. Let's go ahead and move on to the presentation of this game and the visuals. Now, the visuals aren't, obviously, they're not like AAA, so to say, but overall, they're pretty good, especially compared to the first game. I liked the graphical fidelity. I liked how things looked. I liked the color schemes and all that. But what really stood out to me was the presentation, the cinematics. They are so good, and of course they're janky, and the facial animations don't line up sometimes. The face animations aren't that great overall, but I'm not that worried about it. But just the way that the camera moves, the voice acting, of course, you have Ben Starr, Deborah Wild, and Amelia Tyler, and all sorts of big names in here. The voice acting was such quality, so great job to them. But man, they've really stepped their game up. And I actually, at a few points in time, I was getting some reminders of Baldur's Gate 3. Obviously, it's not as good as Baldur's Gate 3. The voice acting is, of course, some of the same voice actors, but the actual way that it's presented was really well done. So shout out to the cinematic team and the way that they move the camera and set up these scenes with the music, and the way the story is told through these cinematics was really, I was blown away by it. I didn't expect it to be that good, especially coming out of such a small team. So speaking of the story, and I'm not going to spoil anything here, I'm just going to set it up for you. So you play as a party of 4 customizable characters, and you're all orphans from the same orphanage, and you are gathering for your mother's funeral. And when you get to the site of the funeral, you end up seeing your orphanage mother's biological children, which is Ricard, voiced by Ben Starr, and also 𝑑eorchis, voiced by Deborah Wild, Lae'zel from Baldur's Gate 3. And these two find themselves at odds with the circumstances of your mother's death. Ultimately, all the siblings find themselves in the middle of some ancient conflict that was left unresolved by their mother, and now it's kind of on them, and they have differences in opinion as to how to handle that. And then the villain, which is Amelia Tyler, Shadwin, ties into this somehow. She's like some ancient quasi-deity whose corruption threatens to consume the entire land. And it's up to you to kind of figure out what's going on, because your mother was, of course, entangled in this, and now it's kind of fallen onto the children's responsibility to resolve what's going on here. But without spoiling anything, I was invested in the story, and part of that is because of the presentation value, like I talked about a moment ago. But also, I was surprised that they pulled off this whole orphanage thing. This is, of course, going to be subjective, but at first I was like, this is a story of a bunch of orphans gathering. Like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem that believable. It might be end up being a little cringy or something like that, but I actually really like the foundation of this story, and a lot of the characters that you meet along the way in early access I thought were believable. They had emotions, they all tied into the story somehow. There was some mystery behind the story, but then you also have, you know, the brothers and sisters all sometimes having differences of opinions with family matters, which brings in some intensity. So I like the story and the way it's set up. Only time will tell how it plays out in the long run. Quickly talking about the UI here, overall, I like it. My main criticism is that sometimes there's just way too much going on and everything's too big and things overlap with each other. And as you can see in this combat clip right here, the combat log is huge. And even when I say make the text small and everything, it's still huge. And I don't have the option to just make it go away or whatever, or drag it down somewhere. It's just always taking up half the damn screen. But that's currently its state in early access right now. I'm sure they'll come out with more options and, you know, let people tweak some of these things, but I hope that they do. At the bottom of the screen here, you can see you have your different character bars, and depending on the character that you have selected, it will change kind of what's there. Of course, this is my paladin character, so I have my paladin spells, then I have my paladin powers under their own. Very easy to swap weapons in this game. Just do one little click and you can do this in combat. It doesn't cost an action point currently in early access. Very easy to do. I actually enjoyed that aspect. And then, of course, if I switch over to my rogue character, these change up a little bit. And then we have my fighter character, all character dependent with some similarities between all three, such as the ability to enter into cautious mode if you want to sneak around. And then the mini maps in the bottom right. And although I like the mini map, it doesn't show any icons of things you've discovered on it. And I actually found myself having kind of a hard time navigating between the mini map and my, you know, local or whatever map. I wish they would show some icons. Maybe they have plans for that, but I would love to see icons for traders and characters that have already discovered shown there. Now, if we go into the menu here, we have our character sheet with an explanation, or not explanation, information on all the skills and proficiencies that you have, so you can view all of that. You have your inventory, and the inventory is really easy to navigate right now. We have some different sorting options, which is actually really nice. I hope that they give us some more, like sort by weight and currency and value and stuff like that. But right now, this is a good start. And it's also very easy to transfer items from one character to another. For example, I can just take this javelin, instead of right-clicking, clicking on a name or whatever, you can just grab it and drop it over the character that you want to send it to. And also, when I grab an item such as a potion, it tells you at the bottom of the screen right here how many potions these other characters already have on them, which can be helpful. You can have your potions distributed equally. With that said, I found in combat in early access in its current state, you can transfer items. You don't have to be close to the character. You can do this at any time. So if I don't have any potions on one character, I can just go into the other character and send it to that character and then take the potion with that character. That's its state currently in early access, so very easy to send items to one another, but that of course might change. And then we have the spells menu right here. I'll go to my wizard character. I like how everything's looking. I know that some people I've seen online didn't like how it looked in the previews, but to me, this is overall a thumbs up. Obviously, there's some things they can improve on, but overall, I like it. Just at times, it just gets a little bit too much when you're running around with things popping up and trying to loot things. Things get in other things' way. Moving on to combat. Very similar to the first game and how it feels overall. The combat in its current state right now needs some touching up with like the feelings of impact and the animations and all that, but to be expected in early access, especially the start of early access. But overall, it felt like a solid system. I'm not going to lie, coming off of original Sin 2 and moving back to 5th edition directly from original Sin 2, it's kind of, man, it's just 5th edition combat. I love it, and I loved it in Baldur's Gate 3 and the first Solasta game, but it's so much slower compared to the original Sin games. But I still like it, and Tactical Adventures I think is doing a really good job with the 5th edition rules and mechanics. And in this game, it's obviously very strategy based, and managing your action and your bonus action and class synergies and all that stuff. All that is present in this game. One criticism I have of the combat is there's several combat encounters where you have to like move a lot at the start to get close to the enemy, and it just took a really long time. And some of the random encounters on the world map, yeah, that's the case too. Like the enemy is super far away and the combat's already started and you have to spend 3 rounds moving. And sometimes when you end your turn, like there's a little bit of a delay before you can get to the next character. After your character attacks, it's like you can't instantly just go do the next thing. You have to like wait a second for it to finish. So a few aspects of the combat in its current state I think need to be touched up, the flow of it, to make things a little bit quicker. If Tactical Adventures was able to implement Swarm AI like Larian did with BG3, that would be pretty awesome. I'm not sure if they have the resources or the engine to do that. I do enjoy setting up for combat and stealthing around and trying to make that happen, although the stealth circle is kind of immersion breaking. But overall, I enjoyed setting up. There's a couple of really cool encounters where I got to set up my characters on the stairs, and I just really felt like I was in it, which is what it's all about. As far as difficulty goes, there's only 2 offered in early access, although there are at the start of early access, although there are some custom settings that you can currently tweak. I played on the higher of the 2, authentic mode, and I would say that it was challenging enough to just keep me engaged, and feel like I was involved in the combat versus just completely turning off my brain. And that's all I was expecting for this early access run. So I'd say right now that's good. So overall, I like the direction that they're heading with the combat. I think it has a solid base foundation. There's a few things that I mentioned, like the pacing of combat and, cleaning up the animations and all that hopefully will come throughout early access. But yeah, this is 5th edition combat. There's not a ton for me to talk about here, especially for an early access review. I'll get more into the details and stuff like that for 1.0. And last but certainly not least, we have to talk about the world map travel system. So when you want to travel from location to location, you have to use the world map. For example, we have the city right here. And although you can kind of run around most of the city freely, if I wanted to go to this camp out here, I have to travel across the grid. And every time you move, you can see my party right here. Every time you move, it uses up some of your movement points, which are represented on the bottom of the screen right here. And if you move past 8 movement points, you move into your forced march movement points, which basically simulates marching at nighttime, and your characters have to undergo passive checks. And if they fail, they end up gaining levels of exhaustion, which is basically a debuff. And also at nighttime, you're more likely to encounter random encounters. So you can get caught in a random encounter while exhausted, which can be bad news for your party. Overall, I like the world map travel system. I think it's really cool how you can just travel freely. So I can go to locations that have quest objectives, but I can also just explore the map. And this is, of course, a limited map for early access. You can see a mountain range right here. When the full game comes out, you're gonna have to find a way to navigate around that mountain range. But you can go wherever you want. And these little question marks on the map are like these points of interest where little events can happen. And you also have some events here that are timed. For example, if I want to make it to this event right here before it disappears, I have to get there in 1 travel in 12 movement points. If I need to long rest, this one is going to go away. And where some risk versus reward comes in is if I was able to reach this one, it might actually force me to march in forced march and risk those random encounters that are more likely and becoming exhausted if I wanted to reach this one. Otherwise, it would go away. And do note that when you travel to different grid spaces, requires different amounts of movement points. So if you're moving through a swampy or a forest area, it might require more, while when you're moving on an area where there's a road or something, it may require less. So yeah, overall pretty cool system. You do get these random travel events every time you move into a new grid. I think there's a chance of a random encounter, but there's also a chance of these travel events where a little story will present itself and your characters will, sometimes be able to do a skill check to perceive something, maybe get some loot, and a few of them might actually bring you on to like a little map as well. Obviously the combat encounters, the random encounters are maps, but I actually experienced another map where I was able to explore a little bit and find some treasure. So really cool system. I hope they keep working on it, and I can't wait to explore the map in its entirety. And now that I'm at the end of the video, I'm realizing that I forgot a few quick things. One, character progression. This is just like Solasta 1 or Baldur's Gate 3. You get XP by killing enemies, doing quests, etc., and then you level up, and this is 5th edition, Rules and Mechanics 2024. And the leveling up is like the character creator. It's very easy to understand, it's well laid out, and at level 3 you get to choose new subclasses, of which I got to experience a few of those. Each class has, I believe, 2 subclasses, but one of the 2 is completely new to the Solasta universe, and it's fun to see some of those new features and to see how Tactical Adventures is working on creating these new homebrew subclasses. Like I said, max level is 4 in early access. Now you also progress in this game by finding better armor and weapons. There weren't like a ton of that in the early access. I mean, we're also low level too, so you're not going to find a ton of that in general, but I found a few magical weapons and armor that got me to increase some of my gear, which is character progression. Not insanely exciting yet in early access, but it's also low level, D&D here, so how exciting can it possibly get? But, it was all right. Then, of course, we have the short and long rest system. So you can only long rest in this game. Well, while you're on the world map, you can long rest. But if you're in a town, you have to find an inn and stay at the inn. Or if you're out and about, you have to find a campsite on a map. So long resting is limited. I actually like that they have it like this, that you can't just go to camp whenever you want and long rest, because it creates a little bit of engagement, as you don't want to, just straight up waste all your spell slots just on a single encounter if you don't need them, or recklessly spend your class features and all that stuff. So there is a sense of like having to manage that stuff while you're out and about, because you don't always have access to long rest. Now, with that said, if you're not in a place of danger, you can short rest in most areas, as long as there's no combatants nearby. And short rest is a little bit stricter than Baldur's Gate 3 in that you have to roll die to regain some of your hit points. You only have a limited amount of die to roll, or dice to roll, so keep that in mind. This is a little bit more hardcore than a game like Baldur's Gate 3. And of course, short rests don't come with all the benefits that a long rest does, so you're not getting everything, but they are quite useful. In early access, you can do 4 of them in between each long rest, as long as you're not in a dangerous area. Now, also note that to level up your character, you have to do this while long resting. So if you've gained the required XP to level up, then you're probably going to want to go find a way to long rest. It's also important to note that to long rest, you do have to have food, and you only need 1 ration for your entire party in this game, and I had plenty of them in early access, so I'm not sure if that's going to be a limited resource in any way, shape, or form, but it certainly wasn't hard to have a bunch of them in early access. In long rest, whenever I had the opportunity to do so, even when moving across the world map, I never felt like I was really running too low. But I guess if I did that a lot, then you would start to run into a lack of resources problem. But overall, I enjoyed the short and long rest system. It would be nice to have a little scene associated with long resting or short resting versus just menu interfaces, but hey, that might be asking too much. Wrapping things up, Solasta II Early Access was a really good time. Obviously, it's the start of Early Access. The game is still very much in development, and you're going to know that when you're playing, whether that be like little bugs that you encounter here and there, or missing systems such as picking up crafting supplies, but crafting not currently being implemented into the game. But for where it's at right now, I am super excited for 1.0. I think Tactical Adventures has a really solid vision here, and a vision that they're actually going to be able to pull off. And kind of like with Larian, you know, with Original Sin to Original Sin 2 and then Original Sin 2 to BG3, I see Tactical Adventures like making such a massive improvement from their first game. This makes me excited for what their next game will be after this one, and you guys are going to feel that right away when you jump into this one compared to the first one. So it's got my thumbs up for supporting it in early access. Of course, if you're against early access, do what you got to do. Doesn't matter to me really, but for myself, I have no problem, you know, supporting this type of project. Just like with Larian, with BG3, I think early access is a good thing for this game and for this company, because I don't think they're a scammy company or anything like that. So thank you all so much for watching. I should have a Solasta II Early Access Beginner's Guide coming out, I think, like tomorrow maybe, and I'll also be live streaming a run right here on this channel as well as on Twitch at WolfheartFPS. We'll play through the early access one time and then wait for some updates. Catch y'all in the next one.